This is Transcast from the Metrans family of centers. I'm Mat Kaplan with another of the great conversations we recorded at the International Urban Freight Conference, or INUF, in Long Beach. This biannual event has become one of the most important gatherings of goods movement researchers and professionals from around the world. Benjamin Conwell delivered a captivating keynote on the third and final day of the 2015 INUF. Ben knows more than a little about the real estate end of the goods movement business. He led a tremendous expansion of Amazon's logistics footprint while he was the company's Director of North America Logistics Real Estate. Now he's Senior Managing Director and Practice Leader for Cushman and Wakefield's e-commerce and electronic fulfillment specialty practice group for the Americas. We talked about the diverse and innovative future of logistical facilities. Ben Conwell, thanks very much for joining us on Transcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We just came down from the ballroom where you made your presentation, which I think generated a lot of interest. I was fascinated. We won't get to cover very much of what you talked about upstairs, which you already said was a small subset of what you would like to be able to talk about. You said you have a passion for this stuff.
Absolutely. For me, professionally, it's this great combination of taking what I learned in my role as head of real estate for Amazon, now working with e-commerce clients, occupiers across North America, on how they build their supply chain strategy and then their real estate strategy around that and everything indirectly associated with that. We're all consumers. We all love to shop.
True enough.
So we interact with these kinds of flows and these kinds of systems all the time, directly or indirectly.
I read that you saw, or maybe oversaw, a doubling of real estate devoted to the supply chain for Amazon during your time there.
That's right. A time of really explosive growth. Keeping up with the growth of the business, we built almost 30 million square feet of logistics space, large fulfillment centers, sort centers, basically package handling logistics centers, and what we call last mile depots or last mile terminals.
Which was a good deal of your presentation. We'll get into that in a moment. But you started by sort of establishing the market and made it really clear for anybody who might have been doubting, e-commerce is not going away.
Right, that's right. It is continuing to grow and grow in different directions here in North America, as well as we learned in the conference, more examples of how it's growing in Europe as well as in Asia.
And just a word about those traditional, people have stopped calling them even brick and mortar retailers, maybe because they're not just anymore, of how they are trying to meet the challenge that's coming from places like your former employer, Amazon.
It's the $100 billion question. There are some great examples out there of high-profile retailers that have built tremendous franchises worldwide around their fixed store footprint that are now investing billions of dollars in building a complementary online presence. Easy to look at Walmart, Target, Macy's, companies like that. They recognize that the world is changing around them, and they have no choice but to invest substantial amounts of capital to grow this additional competency. And it's not an either-or. As we talked in the conference, there is a symbiotic relationship really between these leading retailers, between their online presence and their store footprint and that customer experience.
You brought up, you called it, did you say the grand or the great conundrum? Can you share that with us?
Sure. I call it the omni-channel conundrum, where retailers around the world are confronted now with having to respond to, more importantly, to engage customers seamlessly, whether that customer comes to them through their mobile device, through a walk-in in the store. Goodness, some people still order things by telephone. That's not completely archaic, but a seamless experience, the same price, same accessibility to information, to be able to comparison shop, to check availability of products. So the conundrum part comes in where these retailers, senior executives and supply chain leaders, merchandisers, they realize they have got to adapt to continue to engage the customers. But the real question is, what do they do? And we see across North America companies investing many billions of dollars in an omni-channel execution strategy. But survey data suggests these executives have very low confidence that what they're doing is actually what's required. There's a tremendous information gap, experience gap, because people are making it up as they go.
You talked about the advantages that these traditional retailers might be able to take advantage of. You just give us a couple of those examples.
Sure. The major retailers that have built these huge footprints across the country are really hard to compete with if you're an Amazon or a Jet.com, pure online players. It's all about how Walmart, Target, Williams-Sonoma, Macy's, how they leverage that footprint. Today, Walmart has a physical presence of one size or one type of, or another within 5 miles of approximately 70%, 75% of the residents in the U.S. So it's very accessible, and they have built their brand around being close to the customer and around low price experience. The Amazons and Jet.coms, for instance, of the world, to compete with that, need to offer a value proposition that includes being cost competitive, but always to have availability, never to have a stock out. And if you go to Walmart, whether in person or you shop online at Walmart, and if the item you want that you buy online and want to pick up at one of the physical Walmart locations is not in stock at your small town, your neighborhood Walmart, there continues to be a disincentive to use that offering if you have a series of out of stocks. So the competitive advantage, the moat, if you will, of these big retailers with large retail footprints is only as good as their ability to make sure their inventory distribution, inventory management system complements their online presence.
There was at least one other, there were several others, but one other particularly striking advantage that these physical retailers have, and you saved it for us. You revealed a number, and it had to do with shoppers who shop both online and go to stores.
Yes, Walmart just recently in a release about their less than stellar earnings projection included a reference by Doug McMillon, who is the CEO. He said that the average pure in-store shopper in the U.S. spends approximately $1,400 a year in-store. The average online-only shopper at Walmart.com spends on average $200. But the omni-channel shopper, if you will, who takes advantage of online as well as in-person physical retail, that omni-channel shopper at Walmart averages $2,500 per year. It's what I call, rather than an additive effect of online experience plus store experience, it's really more multiplicative. Maybe it's exponential, but it's at least multiplicative.
So this is the world today, and it's only going to become more prevalent and more complex, particularly as we look at the need for smaller retailers to develop their way to get goods to customers, that last mile that was so much has been so much a topic here at the conference. And you had some very interesting things to say about that. In fact, you said that if you had a bunch of money to invest, you'd be putting it into these third-party logistic companies. Why is that?
Well, Amazon is its own beast. And by virtue of the timing head start, the tremendous amount of capital that they've invested in their distribution system, from fulfillment center through the network to your home, they are just a different beast. So if we set them aside and then look at the rest of the universe, the rest of the retail world, those mid-size and small retailers have to rely on UPS or Federal Express or U.S. Postal Service to do their last mile delivery. But increasingly, we're seeing retailers relying on third-party logistics providers to do much more than just that last mile delivery. That is, carrying out the actual fulfillment in a fulfillment center, handling the arrangements for courier service, whether it's self-performed by the 3PL or it's managing that process for the retailer. These retailers for whom online fulfillment is not a core competency, obviously, because it's so new, recognizing that maybe is not the best place for them to invest management resources and a tremendous amount of capital. They have little choice but to hire that out, to bring in professional specialists for whom that is a core competency. And so I like to say that if you take Amazon off the table, the world is going to rely more and more heavily on these 3PLs to get goods from a distribution center all the way to your house or to your office or to your trunk of your car.
And you had a great slide with a whole bunch of these little startups, some that are not quite startups like Uber, but you have to, maybe just as a sidelight, mention this one, Roadie.
Yes, I love this one. Roadie is an offering that is based around the Waffle House restaurant network.
Which you can't avoid if you go to the Southeast.
Precisely, yes. We don't have them here on the West Coast, but it is essentially a crossroads. Everybody in the Southeast, many people in small and medium-sized towns are going to the Waffle House at least once a week. It is an institution in the South. And on the way delivery system, like this gig economy, sort of like the Uber service where you see people going from one point to another. Hey, by the way, I could pick up packages for brand X. I could deliver them to that neighborhood where I'm going. It's much the same sort of thing with this Roadie offering, where using the parking lot of a Waffle House with some integration and mobile-based communication to coordinate delivery of a package. Then you can come and pick it up after church. You've gone to Waffle House on Sunday. You pick up that package and you deliver it to someone who might be in your neighborhood. You earn a couple of bucks. It's an example of how innovative and really out of the box many of these concepts are. Not all of them get funded, but there is a tremendous amount of capital that's chasing these providers because the demand is huge. It may not be Roadie, but every week there are new players that join this market.
Entrepreneurship is alive and well.
Yes.
So let's go back to your business at Cushman and Wakefield, real estate. How is the business being affected by these changes? Are we going to see more or fewer? We'll start with at the top end of these humongous, million square foot plus warehouses that we have in the Inland Empire here in Southern California.
The days of the very, very large e-commerce fulfillment centers, as you say, 1 million to 1.4 million, 1.6 million, those days are not over. There will continue to be a need for these very, very large, very expensive facilities nationwide. These are very expensive to develop. They incorporate a tremendous amount of technology, require a very, very large amount of power, but probably most relevantly to the markets in which they're located, they're tremendous employers. These warehouse buildings are not like, as I like to say, our father's warehouse distribution building where there might be 150 workers. These large fulfillment centers employ upwards of 1,000, 1,500, even some up to 2,000 workers at a time.
You showed us one with 2,000 parking spaces.
Yes, and the jobs are tremendous. The jobs are great, especially in towns that are hungry for large employers that pay a working wage with benefits. But you bring that many people onto a single location, it has ramifications for single car, single occupancy vehicle, the impacts, the need for mass transit, public transit to serve these facilities, and then the truck volumes that come off of these. So very large employers have a significant impact in the communities where they land. If you work down the continuum briefly from very largest on the periphery of metropolitan areas We will continue to see also a proliferation of 3, 4, 500,000 square foot fulfillment centers that can fit in closer to the metro area, closer to the density of consumers, whereas you can't put a 1 million square foot building close in South LA very easily. You can't put them in South San Francisco or in Manhattan. These buildings still use some automation, hold the highest, the fastest velocity inventory. Remember, these operators have excellent predictive data, quantitative analysis that they know to stock what because it's most likely to be ordered. So you're seeing small quantities held in warehouses closer into the metro areas.
Yeah.
And then the last leap, if you will, really is to much, much smaller buildings that are most deeply penetrated into the urban areas. 34th Street in Manhattan was a very high-profile last-mile terminal, if you will, in Manhattan when it opened a year ago. It enabled Amazon to launch what is today the Prime Now offering for 1 hour or 2 hour delivery.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And there will continue to be dozens and dozens of these, I expect, in the Amazon network in the next year or so.
One step higher in that hierarchy that you just left, I think. Say something about this facility in South San Francisco. Like you said, 3 miles south of Market Street. Not an inexpensive building.
No. Prologis, which is, as many of your listeners no doubt know, is one of the largest industrial investor, owner, developers in the world, headquartered in San Francisco. And I've had the occasion to work with the Prologis leaders on many different projects. They have a tremendously large portfolio of large buildings and mid-sized buildings, but they are being prescient enough, in my mind, to invest in smaller assets, much, much smaller buildings, deeply embedded into the urban areas. So they have a site, as you described, about 17 acres with a to-die-for close-in location for last-mile delivery, courier service, on which they have planned a combination of two-story distribution buildings. So maxing out the coverage on the site, the FAR, if you will, building footprint, but creating a second level where large trucks can access dock doors and then conveyance within the building from one floor to another. It's an expensive building to build. The rents are not cheap, but what it absolutely has going for it is a dream location for these kinds of users. I am very excited about what they have designed for that location and have planned for a similar location, a location with many of the same characteristics in the south close-in part of urban Seattle. You go to Hong Kong, you go to London, you go to extremely high land value markets, you see this.
It's not new to them.
It's not new to those markets, but it's pioneering here in the U.S.
Speaking of which, you had a couple of Europeans up on the panel with you who joined the conversation after your presentation. Is there more that we should be learning from not just Europe, but from Asia and elsewhere around the world, best practices that might work here?
I think it's absolutely the right thing for all of us in forums like this to have this exchange. It's invaluable. Walmart, for instance, learned for a number of years with their grocer that they own over their Asda. They learned a wealth of information about in-store pickup or kiosks in the parking lot where you're buying online and you're swinging through, you're not even crossing the threshold at the store. They created years' worth of experience that they're now deploying over here in the States. And there are other examples where retailers and shippers have brought experience and technology to bear on other sides of the ocean. And I'd say in Asia, there's no better example for how to do extreme density last mile delivery than what we see in China with dozens and dozens of cities with 5 and 10 million residents at a time. Some of Amazon's competitors in China are completely eating their lunch, if you will, because they know how to do that delivery and that execution in China way better than Amazon.
You mentioned also, because of a question that came from an attendee here at the conference from India, that Amazon is going into India in a big way.
In a very big way. There is a company called Flipkart in India, started by some former Amazon logistics leaders. Flipkart has attracted hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars from very high-profile venture and technology investors to create the Indian Amazon, if you will. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, in response to Flipkart's success, came out and trumpeted that they're going to make multi-billion-dollar investments in India to grow the presence. Today, Amazon sees India as the number one potential growth market for their business. I think that's inevitable. India has grown to be $1 billion in sales for Amazon faster than any other country in which Amazon has launched.
Wow.
So it's already proving to be fertile, but the challenges in executing logistics and fulfillment in India with its cities and its transportation network is a tremendous challenge.
But that up-and-coming, newly achieved middle-class person in Bangalore wants his box of pens in 1 hour.
That's right. And I dare say Jeff B. wants them to be able to get it in an hour.
I will close with this because it's kind of an entertaining point. And it was brought up by Allison Conway, who is a past guest on Transcast. She talked about, she lives in Manhattan. She's actually being offered incentives by Amazon for slower delivery. They'll give her, 3 pieces of music off of Amazon Prime. Apparently you've seen this. I hadn't heard of this.
Yes, it's another trend that I think we will see from other retailers emulating what Amazon is doing. We have become, in the last few years, so what I call addicted to the crack of instant gratification.
And we want it free.
And we want it free. We want it fast, and we want it free. So when we order just about anything online today from Amazon, if you're like me, hey, I'm a Prime member, which means I can get free shipping in 1 day, 2 day, of course, but I can probably get 2 hour for free. So, of course, I'm going to opt for that. That's not sustainable for all the players out there that are the retailers who are offering free shipping, and everybody has a free shipping offering. It's not sustainable. It's what I call it's a race to the bottom. Yes. Because nobody makes money in this. It's a loss leader. There's some recent survey information, anecdotal data that suggest maybe we as a customer base are starting to lose a little bit of the novelty of always clicking the fastest delivery method. By that I mean we're seeing some indications that people are valuing cost of shipping ahead of speed. So it's exactly what Amazon is deploying now. You want that box of pens. If you really want it today, it'll cost you a little bit. If you want it in an hour, it might cost you $4. If you want it in 2 hours, no sweat. But if you don't really need those until Thursday, and you're here on a Monday, they're offering incentives to de-expedite, if you will, to slow steam delivery to your house because it's so much less expensive for Amazon to execute that.
This omni world of ours is only becoming more and more complex.
Agreed. It's an exciting time to be in the distribution, retail, and logistics business.
Ben, thank you very much. This has really been fascinating and very enjoyable, as I enjoyed your presentation upstairs here at the INUF. Thanks again.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Transcast with our guest, Benjamin Conwell, Senior Managing Director and Practice Leader for Cushman & Wakefield's e-commerce and electronic fulfillment specialty practice group for the Americas. Ben spoke with us at INUF, the 2015 International Urban Freight Conference in Long Beach, California. Transcast is a production of the MetTrans family of centers, funded by agencies and organizations including the U.S. Department of Transportation and the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans. Visit us at mettrans.org to learn how our research and services can benefit your efforts. I'm Mat Kaplan. Thanks for listening to Transcast.